Hey brothers, I'm super excited to have you here today for this video, because if you don't know how to customize your diet to fit your unique body, your unique needs, then you will never find your optimal diet. So this is what we will be getting into today, and as we have talked about in the previous 2 episodes, then there is no one optimal diet for every single human being. There is only an optimal starting point, and then we have to customize for there to find what works for our unique body. So we start with a species appropriate starting point, focusing on the foods that have been treasured by our ancestors throughout millennia, the foods that we know work best for creating thriving health within the human physiology, the foods that have shaped our physiology to become the apex predator of this planet. And as mentioned now to exhaustion, these foods are meats and organs, fruits, honey, dairy, shellfish, eggs, and then with the suboptimal survival foods, root veggies and grains when they are cooked and processed appropriately. So it becomes very simple to meet your nutritious demand, and you are gonna escape all those anti-nutrients that are gonna block mineral absorption and can lead to a whole cascade of physiological issues. Again, if you haven't checked out those 2 previous videos, I would go back and check those out. They lay a lot of the foundation for what we will be getting into today. So go back and check those videos. You find them right up in the corner there. So now to today's video, where we of course will be getting into why there is no one optimal diet. I just want to lay that clear. I know we went into that in the previous 2 videos, but I just want to make it very clear and give you another perspective on it. Then we will be getting into what the problematic foods are, of course within the species appropriate diet framework, right? So we are not going to talk about veggies, we're going to talk about the foods that I just mentioned and which ones typically are problematic. And lastly, we will be getting into how you can fix any of the food intolerances that you might experience within this framework. So now let's dive into the topic, and as always, if you have any questions whatsoever, then be sure to leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. And if you find this information valuable, then be sure to like the video, hit subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified when new content comes out. And most importantly, if you treasure this information, then help me get it out to more men so we can help more men set their lives straight by getting their physiology right. This means a lot to me. So if you find this information valuable, you like the content, then be sure to share it with a friend so that we can get more men onto this. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the content. So there is no one diet that fits everybody. You might think that this is unfortunate, right? You see, most people have been conditioned into the thought that the best approach is that we have experts that figure everything out and then tells us what to do, and then we just follow those guidelines and everything will be a-okay. I think this is extremely unfortunate, and I don't really think this is how we feel inside. I think we all like to choose what we want to eat. I think we are all grown up enough to figure out for ourselves what we like and what we don't like. The problem is that we don't trust the body anymore. We don't trust our intuition because we have been told by these experts, by mom and pops, that everything that the body tells us is wrong, right? We have told that sugar cravings are bad. We have been told that fat is bad. We have been told that we should eat less and exercise more, when oftentimes we feel huge hunger pants and feel exhausted from all the excessive exercise that we have done. We have been disconnected completely from what the body has told us to be true. And I mean, what did we end up with? A deeply sick society, right? I believe that we actually don't just want to follow a diet that is being put over our head. I believe that we all have certain favorite foods that we would love to include more and more of in our diets. And I actually think that if you just did that, ate the most delicious foods that you treasure the most, making sure that the ingredients are well sourced and that you leave out all the industrial toxic waste like preservatives and emulsifiers and seed oils, yes, then I think that you would be much better off than trying to follow the food pyramid and all of the recommendations that comes from these experts. And there is your proof that the body knows. You just need to interpret the cravings of the body in the mindset that your body doesn't know about this whole industrial world that we have created. So when your body craves sugar, it doesn't crave a Twinkies, right? It craves fruits and honey. When your body craves fat, it doesn't crave seed oil laden potato chips, right? It craves a fatty steak. So in that framework, listen to the cravings of your body and satisfy those needs. So appetite and cravings really becomes the guiding compass in terms of our individual needs. Okay, so now we have simplified the diet to the most nutritious, bioavailable and least toxic foods on the face of the planet. And not so surprisingly, these are also the most delicious foods on the face of the planet, right? Your body got you. Okay, so now we've got fruits, honey, dairy, meats, organs, eggs, any animal product, right? So now let's see what are the most problematic foods within this framework. So the foods that most typically give people digestive issues are of course dairy, eggs, the most fibrous foods, and of course the suboptimal food groups, right? The grains and the root veggies. If you experience any discomfort while eating these foods or up to 2 hours after eating them, then you have a sensitive gut and we have something to work with. These discomforts can be obvious, like bloating, gases, burping, just feeling cramps or pains or diarrhea or constipation. These are all obvious signs of digestive issues. The signs can also be less obvious signs of detoxification, right? This can be seen on the skin, like skin rashes or itching or stuff like that. Now, the end goal is to be able to eat all of these foods. We should all be able to get to that point. Now, the problem is just that we have been, exposed to too many toxic foods, and largely the food supply is toxic. And then also the devastating farming practices that have completely destroyed animal products, and all of these things have led to the population getting an overly sensitive gut. But really the gut can heal very rapidly. So now let's just take a look at these problematic foods and then see how you can fix your intolerances. Of course, it has to be said that if you are suffering from really hard digestive issues, it will take months, it can even take years. So be patient, let the body do what it does and help it to heal in the most proper way. So if you have issues with dairy products, then I would always seek out raw dairy. So get some raw milk and then just take half a cup. Take a small amount and see if you can handle that. So if you can handle that, then keep it at that and then just ramp it up over time until you meet your satisfied demand. If even that amount of raw dairy is a problem for you, then I would seek out A2 dairy. This would be goat's milk. It can also be cow's milk, but it has to say A2 on the carton. This is the original dairy. This is the dairy that we have been consuming for tens of thousands of years as human beings. Then as we got smarter and wanted to outsmart nature a little more, optimizing the dairy production, in the mutation that we caused within the cows, they started producing a different composition, chemical composition in the milk that we term A1. So A2 is much more compatible for your human digestive system, simply because your physiology has been used to this form of dairy for way longer. So with eggs, the problem is really twofold. Either you feel nausea or you feel down or you just, have a headache, something like that. If that's your issue, it's probably a low blood sugar issue. And then I would just make sure to get a lot of carbs with the eggs. So I would probably limit it to just one egg and take a good glass of orange juice and then see if you can handle that if the symptoms goes completely away. If they do, then maybe take 2 eggs if you really enjoy it, and then just make sure to have that carbs with it. If your problem is more of a typical digestive issue like, itching, bloating, gases, whatever, then I would completely leave out the egg white. It's because the egg white has a very tough protein to digest. So, getting rid of the egg white while you optimize your overall health and heal your gut, and then you can always reintroduce it again, and then probably your digestive system can already handle it by then. Now, the most fibrous fruits are fruits such as bananas, dates, mangoes, persimmons, and of course the non-sweet fruits, right? So contrary to what we have been told again, fibers can be very problematic in human digestion. First off, they are very hard to digest, meaning that they can actually rip the gut lining. And next off, they feed the gut bacteria in the large intestine, which you really don't want to feed too much because these bacteria all produce an endotoxin called lipopolysaccharide, which is just one of the many endotoxins. Being an endotoxin means that it's a toxin within the body, right? So these endotoxin can end up in your bloodstream, go through your blood-brain barrier, and give you all sorts of symptoms. They have been correlated to increased risk of obesity, heart disease, and many other physiological issues. So we want to feed the microbiome as little as possible, and we do this by excluding fiber as much as possible. So first off, when eating fruits in general, it's extremely important that they are ripe and mature and ready to eat. Because as a fruit ripens, it breaks down the fibers and turns them into sugar. That increases the nutrient density, the bioavailability of those nutrients, and it decreases the fibers within the foods that are hard for your gut to digest. So with a banana, of course, that means a yellow-brown banana, not a yellow-green banana, how I see a lot of Scandinavians at least eat their bananas. What you can do with fruits, and what I always do with my bananas, is that you can fry them in butter or coconut oil or tallow or something like that. You can fry them in some fat, which further breaks down and pre-digests the fibers, turns it into sugar, increasing the nutrient density within the fruit. You can also cook them in the oven, like you can cook apples and stuff in the oven, and that also increases the nutrient density within the fruit, pre-digesting the fibers. And of course, you should treat non-sweet fruits like you would treat root veggies, right? You cook them in the oven with adequate fat for at least 40 minutes, or you boil the heck out of them and then you can fry them on the pan if you want that crisp in it, or but cook your roots, tubers, and non-sweet fruits for at least 40 minutes. Again, like this, you break down the fibers, increasing the nutrient density and the bioavailability of those nutrients. Now, if any of these fruits still causes issues, then just exclude them completely and then try to reintroduce them again after a few months or so. And you will see if that underlying digestive issue have, healed or become better, and now actually you are able to tolerate these foods. After eating cleaner and excluding a lot of these insoluble fibers, your gut and digestion tract should improve its health, and you should be able to include a lot of these super delicious and nutrient dense foods once again. Now, root veggies we kind of touched upon with that cook time and cooking method, but I do want to mention that root veggies are very different, right? Some contain way more anti-nutrients than others. For example, beets are notorious for their oxalate content. So you might want to try out different roots and then see if your body can actually digest and do fine on some of them. Typically, carrots are a safe root veggie to go for. Potatoes for some, yams for others. The potato family as a whole is extremely nutritious, and you can always see if russet doesn't sit good with you, maybe another type of potato will be fine. So again, it's about trying out, taking the foods that you like and then trying them out and seeing how you can include them in your diet without it causing issues. And if it is still an issue, exclude them for a couple of months while you fix the underlying issues and then include it again. Now, talking about grains, we have many different sorts of grains. So let's try to divide them up a little bit. So we have the wheat and rye type of grain. Then we have the corn, also called maize in many parts of the world. And then we have the rice, right? So let's talk about these different types of grains. So with the wheat grains, we always want to get rid of the outer shell. Here lies a lot of the defense chemicals, right? The grain is trying to protect itself from invaders. So we remove the outer shell and then we are left with this beautiful little grain, which produces white flour. Now, this inner part of the grain is still problematic, which is why we call it a suboptimal food group, because it contains a very hard to digest protein chain called gluten. To protect ourselves from this very problematic protein chain, we must first make sure to buy organic flour. And next, we want to make sure that it's an older species of flour. And here I will tell you why. Grains are the most human influenced food we have on the face of the planet, right? We have genetically modified these foods to exhaustion to make them yield more, grow faster, so that we can, get more out of it, right? These manipulations and all of these pesticides and chemicals we constantly are spraying them with is interpreted by the plant as stress. And a plant responds to stress like any living organism does. it develops more defense chemicals. It tries to defend itself better. And so what we see in these newer forms of grains are that they have way more defense chemicals and contain way more gluten, which of course makes it hard to digest and troublesome to eat. Therefore, seek older sorts of grain. It typically says on the package if it is from an older sort of grain. That's good marketing. And then make sure to ferment it, making sourdough out of it to further break down this gluten chain. This is how our ancestors would only eat these breads, these wheat flours. So older sorts of grains and ferment it into sourdough. Then you are left with an incredibly delicious and nutritious bread. Now with grains, what you can do is again to try out different sorts. First, of course, you want to make sure that the layer, the peel is taken off, right? So you are left with white rice. Now, secondly, you want to try out different sorts. So again, rice, it's a grain. It has been modified and influenced by humans to exhaustion, right? And so it develops more defense chemicals. So with rice, it becomes quite simple also, because you can actually go for the rice that is the longest grain. Humans have tried to modify the rice to be shorter and shorter so that they can yield more and more, and you have more kilo, more weight to sell in the end of the year. So I have found that jasmine rice, which is a longer grain than, for example, basmati rice, works much better for me than basmati rice does. So like that, you can try different sorts of rice and see what works best for you. And lastly, with corn or maize, actually our ancestors would only consume these grains when they had gone through the process called nixtamalization. This is a process that is quite like sourdough. It's a little more complicated, but it removes the defense chemicals and pre-digests the grain. Now you're left with a more bioavailable mass of nutrients, and you get a less heavy load on the digestive system, meaning that you have to spend less energy consuming those maize. Obviously, this has been of huge value to our ancestors. And I mean, if our ancestors do it, you probably should do it too. You can easily find nixtamalized maize flour in any store. So yeah, drop your maize cone and go for nixtamalized maize flour if you want to make something like tortillas. Alright, good people, that was it for today. Let me know if there is anything, any specific food or something that you want me to dive deeper into, and I'll make sure to make a video on that. And else, there is nothing else to say than all the best to your healing journey. Healing your gut is the best place to start in setting your life straight and becoming the man you wish to be. Alright, love and chi.